And most of what I'm referring to, the history, came from Raghib al-Sirjani and from Ibn Kathir and from Sayyid al-Khatir. When Timur Lenk and the second wave of Mongolians attacked the Muslim land, and Muhammad ibn Ghalib al-Tawil, one of the Nusayriyin that wrote a book, said that Timur Lenk was Nusayri, meaning that he was Alawite. Well, let's set that aside. Timur Lenk came. The leader of Halab sent to arrange with him this is the Amir of Halab. He is the Amir of that city. He asked him to come and attack his city first and wipe as much as he can out of his people. Because the Amir of Halab was Nusayri. And the people of the Sunnah in Halab, they were trying to revolt against him. Then he moved to Damascus. In Damascus, he's met by 40 women that are weeping and wailing to claim that they are from the people Al-Bayt. And they've been attacked or raped and this and that. And Timur Lenk goes in an outrage in Damascus. He goes in outrage, he kills as much as he can, and he makes it a free city for anyone that want to do any atrocity for 7 days. To the point that some of the historians report that there was not a woman of age at that time that was not attacked. This is the history, what the history tells us. Who is this group? What are they? What do they stand for? What do they believe in? This is what we're going to go through as much as we can with the time that is allowed today. They came, as we said, the name Alawais. This is a recent name. This is a name that was given them back in 1919, 1920. So it's not a very old name. What just was given to them to make him look more polished, preparing them for what comes after. Before that, they were Nusayriyin. And Nusayriyin, in relation to Ibn Nusayr and Numayri, he came back in around 270 Hijri. 270 Hijri, he was a servant of supposedly the Imam of the Shia. He was a Shiite. The Imam of the Shia, Al-Mahdi, Al-Hadi, Al-Hasan Al-Askari. He served them. And then eventually the Imamah discontinued. So he claimed that he is now the one that holds the secret. He is the one that can get the message back and forth to the last Imam. And people start growing around him. The Shiites from that time, they pronounced him as a kafir. And throughout history, they called him kafir until the first quote-unquote Imam that said, yeah, they are believers, was a Sadr in Lebanon, not long in the 70s, the one that disappeared in Libya. That was the first quote-unquote Imam that said, yeah, they are Muslims. Before that, they were not considered Muslims, even by the Shiites. Followed after his death was Muhammad ibn Jundub. And then the Jumbulani. Jumbulani is a Persian. And just so, for the sake of history, Jumbulani, his son is the one who started the group called Al-Qaramita. For those who may remember the Qaramita, the one that took the black stone and ran for 22 years. The Muslims will make Hajj to around Kaaba without the black stone because the Qaramita had it. After they slaughtered the Hajij that day when they took it. Then Al-Khusaybi. Al-Khusaybi from Egypt. He came with the Jumbulani and started establishing the principles and everything, setting up and gearing up for building this madhab. They were protected by the Halab. Halab, the Imara of Halab, was a Shiite at that time, and they gave him protection. And from there, it continued throughout history, working with the enemies of Islam very much at every front. And if you go through Ibn Kathir and through other historical records, you'll be surprised of what they have been able to do against Muslims and against Islam. without taking too long on the history, but eventually, recently, in the 1920s, they worked with France to help occupying Syria. As in return, France established a country for them, an autonomous region for them from 20 to 36. And the one that have actually sent the letter asking for that, informing the French that they are not Muslims, they do not belong to this, and making his case and his argument for an autonomous country, was the grandfather of Bashar al-Assad. Shortly after that, Sulaiman al-Murshid came in the picture. Sulaiman is one of them. He was a cow herder. He all of a sudden felt his God. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And he took a prophet that happened to be a goat herder. Now we have to remember that they were not the most educated, the most knowledgeable. They were easy. They were very poor and hungry. Sulaiman, he would fool them into thinking that he's God by hiding some food in a wall, and then he come and he would hit the wall, the food would drop, he gave it to them, and that was his sign of being God. Sometimes he would paint his leg with sulfuric materials to shine at night, and that was his sign of it. After Sulaiman, his son, Mujib, came and he claimed that now he is, because Sulaiman, by the way, was hanged in 1946 after the liberation of Syria. His son, Mujib, came and he claimed that now he is God, and he was killed in 1951. And later his other son, Mughith, came and did the story and continued that until the 1966. Now we said the name Alawite was given to them in around 1920, because at that time, and let history teach us, we may stop at the end of the khutbah and check by around some of the lessons we need to learn from history by this. At that time, there was the rise of Arabism, following the revolution against the Khilafah in Turkey by the Arab armies. So there was the rise of Arabism, the rise of nationalism, and the distance from Islam. So that was their chance. They changed the name and they molded with these groups that they were calling for Arabism and nationalism and Ba'athism and this and that. And in 1966, they started getting in the army and getting this in power, establishing themselves. And in 1970, all of a sudden, we have the president of Syria happened to be from them. Quickly, this is the history of how they get in the picture. We'll follow. And now, I think most of us know the story from there. After his death, his son, who we are seeing right now, took over. What do they believe in? Maybe this will give us a feeling of understanding of what's. They believe that Ali, radiallahu anhu, is Allah. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ. Well, Ali is a man, yes, Allah came in the body of a man to be close to the ones he loved. Does that sound familiar? Yes, they took that from Christianity to some extent. They changed Jesus to Ali. Not only that they loved Abdurrahman ibn Miljam. Abdurrahman ibn Miljam is the man who killed Ali, radiallahu anhu wa ardah. Why? Because he is the one who freed Allah from his human body. As if Allah, the creator of this earth, could not free himself. He needed Abdurrahman ibn Miljam to free him. And then after that, Ali lived, according to them, in the clouds. Some of them, when they passed by the cloud, they say, Assalamu alayka ya al-Hasan. Ya al-Hasan. And that the thunder is his voice. And the light, the lightning is his whip. They believe that Ali created Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Muhammad created Salman al-Farisi. And Salman al-Farisi created, they call him the 5 orphans. Who are they? Al-Miqdad ibn al-Aswad, Abu Dhar al-Ghafari, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, Uthman ibn Mad'un, Umbur ibn Kadan. Al-Miqdad ibn al-Aswad, he is the Lord, the Rabbun Nas. He is the creator of Nas. He is the one who created them, and he is the one, part of his responsibility is thunder. Abu Dhar al-Ghafari, his responsibility is the revolution of the stars and the planets. Abdullah ibn Rawaha, his responsibility is taking care of sending the winds wherever he wants to, and he's the angel of death. He takes the souls of people. Uthman ibn Mad'un, his specialty is your body, your temperature, your stomach, this and that. And Umbur ibn Kadan, he is the one who blows the soul in people. He's a khalq, nafkh al-ruh. He's the one who starts life in humans. They respect wine a lot, to the point that you're not allowed to cut a grape tree. As a matter of fact, they call wine an-nur, the light. They pray 5 times in a day, but they're different in rak'at. There's no sujood. There's no Jum'ah. They don't pray Jum'ah. Wudu and Janaba, no. There's no Tahara. They have no masajid. They pray in their homes, and their prayer is accompanied by a lot of hoopla stuff. They have masses, just like Christian masses. And there's some of these in a long list of masses and what have you that they just don't have the time to go through them. They do not recognize Hajj. They consider Hajj as kufr and worshipping of ibadat asnam. They do not have zakat, but they have money that they pay to their leaders, the khums. What's fasting to them? Not touching women the whole month of Ramadan. That's fasting. Food and water, that doesn't count. They hate the Sahaba, especially Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, radiallahu anhum wa arda. They believe that every belief has a surface thing and has an internal thing. Zahir wa batin. That janaba, when we say janaba, no, janaba is not wudu. Janaba is, as they say, muwalatu al-dad wal-jahl bil-ilm al-batin. Meaning, janaba is when you obey the enemies and not know the secrets and the internal of things. Of course, the tahara is the opposite. When you disobey the enemies and you know the secrets of things. And the siyam is to keep the secrets. Notice to keep secrets, zahir, batin, superficial, internal, because their deen is built on secrecy, brothers and sisters. That's why very few records out there that details the deen. Some of the main records that detail the deen came from people that repented from them and went to, maybe even repentance continued to be the term, became Muslims or became Christians and published. Zakah, when you say zakah, no, that's referring to Salman al-Farisi. Jihad, to curse the enemies and those who give the secrets out. And hidayah is to be dedicated to the idea, the Nusayriya idea. That's jihad. Quran came to teach sincerity to Ali. And Salman al-Farisi, he is Jibreel. He came and taught Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam Quran. Salah, 5 names. That's all of the Salah. Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Muhsin, Fatima. Muhsin is the secret, the hidden secret, as they say. They're referring to the supposedly what the miscarriage, supposedly the miscarriage that Fatima had. Ulama of Islam, Muslim, the Sunnah, and in the past, the Shia. They all agreed that they are not considered Muslims. They all agreed that they are considered kuffar. And they all agreed that you cannot marry from them, you cannot give them marriage from your family, you cannot just treat them like mushrik. As a matter of fact, Ibn Taymiyyah went even further than this. Summarizing what he said they are more dangerous in Islam than the Christians, and then the Jews, and then the mushrikeen, and that taking care of them should be more important than anyone else of them. Because what we have seen and have read and knowledge of what they've done. They had Eid, they had Ayat, but most of it is a collection from old Persian, like Nairuz, Eid al-Ghadir, and Yawm al-Mubahala, Yawm al-Kisah. That's the day supposedly the Prophet ﷺ called the Christians of Najran for Mubahala. To them, that's the Eid day. Eid al-Adha, they have it, but it's on the 12th day of the Hajj. They also celebrate many Christian days, such as Christmas, Santa Barbara, and the Cross Day, and this and that. They had a very special day called Yawm Dulan. Yawm Dulan is the 9th of Rabi' al-Awwal. That's the day when Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu wa ardah was killed. As you can see, it's just they believe in tanasukh. Souls go from one person to another, and if you're good, your soul go to a higher. If you're bad, goes to down. Just like the Indian beliefs, the Asian beliefs. So it's a combination of a Christian with the old Persian, Majus, Indian, just a collection of them, this all put together, and that's what they manufacture. And if you know, as far as their location, we know their main location where it is right now, but they also are located, there's a good number of them in Turkey. Some of them are in Jabal Mahsen in Lebanon. And there were, before 1948, there was a small, tiny minority in Palestine. Now that we have went through the history briefly, we're seeing this now because of the fact that media is, because the time has changed, and we can see it. But brothers and sisters, this is not the first time it happens. It happened many times before, but we did not see it because we were not there, and the means of broadcasting it to us was not there. Not long ago, back in around 1980, the massacre in Haman, 40,000 were massacred. Even some people in Syria didn't even know about it because there was not the means to broadcast it. The prison of Tadmur, 700 were dropped, of the best men in the country. And not only this, but even other Muslims, the Palestinians, received a good dose in Tel al-Za'tar in Lebanon. What would you do to them when they, as you could see, I was witnessing a video this morning, and you could see that they are enjoying it. They're enjoying killing the believer. Brothers, now that we have introduced this, and Allah be my witness, I do not intend to be disrespectful to anyone, as I've been called that I might be harsh on the previous generations. But we have to look at this and learn from it. When the president of Syria in 1970 became the president, he was who he was. Why was that allowed? Yeah, we were not ready to pay the price at that time. What we did is that we exported the price to be paid by the current generations. Just the same thing as why did the Palestinians, I could speak about that more freely actually, were not willing to pay the price at that time. They exported it to be paid by the other generations. When we look at us as an ummah, why would one single man, figuratively speaking, Hosni Mubarak, hijack 80-some million people and humiliate the image of the country and humiliate this? Why did we just sit back and accepted it? Could we have done different? Could we have approached it differently? Could we have done our job in preventing that and making sure that doesn't happen? Do we carry part of the blames? Does the previous generations carry part of the blames? Not saying this for history, I'm saying that for the future. أقول قولي هذا استغفر لكم فاستغفروه فاستغفروه